Hello, Rick, you there? If you are, you're.
Yep.
Thanks for unmuting.
Trying to figure it out. Okay, I think I got it.
All right. Well, thank you for jumping on. You're our first person for the Q&A. So just kind of want to keep it open, and is there any, just kind of jump in with whatever specific questions you might have, or if there's general information you'd like us to go through, or we're really kind of letting you direct what information you need to make this program potentially work for you.
Oh, I don't know. How many people do you think how many people are signed up to join into this?
There's about I want to say like 15 to 17, but we're kind of on for the hour and a half. People are going to be jumping in and out depending on their schedule. We want to make it as flexible as possible depending on what people were able to do.
Okay.
You can hang out if you want and see if other people join, if that's kind of what you were hoping, or if there's anything we can answer for you right now. We're happy to do that.
I'm gonna wait a minute.
Okay.
I'm just gonna read through that thing real quick again.
Okay. Morning.
Good morning.
Hi, Sarah.
Hello, Avalon. If you have any specific questions, you can unmute yourself if you have any questions. Keeping this as a wide open conversation. So whatever, anything you got, just let us know.
Awesome. Thank you. Really my main question for you all is if there are any specific restrictions on who might put in an application.
Yep. So probably the biggest factor in terms of who can apply, the city for the installation part of the project, when you're actually painting or installing something on the ground, we do need some sort of liability insurance. So if you have a group that has a liability policy, has an insurance policy that they can kind of extend for that period of time, that's probably the most limiting factor. So it does kind of restrict just like a couple people be able to do a project on their own. But in the grand scheme of things, you kind of do need a little bit more than just a couple people to actually install some of these types of projects. Yeah, so that's really the only restriction I would say.
So we're really looking for groups. I think most, like a nonprofit is probably going to carry general liability insurance that you can request an additional insured certificate for the day of the installation, and to have enough people, to show up that day to do the work. I know Frank has his hand raised. I did just want to say maybe we should, those of us from SMTC and City and Adapt, should just introduce ourselves quick. So I'm Megan Vitale with SMTC.
I'm Tom Barnett with the SMTC. And then Andrew.
Andrew Frazier, SMTC. But I'll also answer Adapt questions too.
And I'm Sarah Carroll with Adapt CNY.
And I'm Kevin Busa. I'm with the city of Syracuse.
All right.
Frank, you should be able to unmute yourself if you want to just ask anything.
Yeah, hi everyone. So I have two questions, I guess. Number one is, how do I find out if there's anything already planned for the streets that I am looking to, do a project on, because I don't want to get into all the organizing and planning and you know, writing and everything. Because I've seen some small bike lane improvements done over here on the near west side, Skunk City area, around Fowler High School, and I'd really like in some way to be able to extend sort of knowledge of the biking and pedestrian crosswalk at the end of Otisco that goes over West Street. Like making sure that people are aware of that from like the Geddes Street area, so that people don't have to like try to go down Fayette or you know, just so they know that that's down there. And so I was wondering, you know, first off, if there's any neighborhood, you know, near West Side neighborhood projects that are already in the works for street improvements for bicycling.
Yeah, Kevin, do you have anything specific you want to share on that? I know we're currently doing a study, SMTC is doing a study kind of in that same area, leading to connections on the west side to downtown. But Kevin, is there anything currently in the works beyond just that study?
No, nothing's currently, like, this is the time of the year that we're starting to do a lot more planning work for items like this. But again, just to say what Tom just said as well, they're doing a West Side Trail study for us, looking at bike improvement and bike safety measures along the entire like western area. So that's something that we're going to lean heavily on, and then probably in the next couple of years for expansion.
Okay, great. And my other question is, I did review the guidelines to some degree, but I don't recall if I saw, is funding available for wayfinding signage or anything like that that would assist people like finding, you know, because we have this new community bicycle workshop over here on Marcellus Street, and you know, we've got a community garden and things like that, and we're expecting more pedestrian and possibly bicycle traffic in like a 2, 3, 4 block radius here. And you know, we could do some, obviously there's some like crosswalk and other things that can be done, but I'm wondering, you know, if wayfinding signage is part of this at all.
Yeah, so wayfinding signage is one of the suggested ideas. It is temporary wayfinding signage, so it's not going to be something that's going to be hung up on the existing poles or anything like that for an extended period of time. But doing some sort of temporary signage around the neighborhood, it is a potential project. Yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Avalon.
Avalon first.
Thanks. Yeah, I had a similar question to Frank, which was like if there was a place that we could find information, or should we just ask you all about it? Because what our organization was thinking about was in relation to the CNY regional market, and we didn't know if there was something already in the works, or and I had spoken a little bit with their director and market manager who'd said that like maybe there had been conversations. So just like seeking some clarification on that so we can know what idea to prioritize in our application. And second question, excuse me, I'm sick.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Second question was just if we can if applications could be accepted like on a coalition basis, or if just one organization should submit them, or if like it's helpful to have multiple people submitting.
So for that first question on the regional market, SMTC did do a study on behalf of the city a couple of years ago about improved pedestrian bicycle connections in that area. And I believe the city is moving forward on some of those recommendations. There was an article a couple weeks ago on Syracuse.com that kind of highlighted that, but I don't know if Kevin wants to highlight a little bit more of that. But to your second question, before I let Kevin jump in terms of a coalition proposing a project, we would love that. We would say just submit one proposal and just attach letters of support and indicating that they're all part of this project, that they all want to be involved and as well as assist in the installation of it. Yeah, we would love to see that type of support from multiple organizations. I think that would be an excellent thing to have for any sort of project. But Kevin, do you want to say anything more about the regional market thing before we move to another question?
Yeah, that's a project that's, again, going off of the SMTC study that was just dropped in the chat. That planning is just starting to take place now. So that's a up and coming project, of course. Definitely some enhancements around some of those bigger intersections, but another big thing is being able to connect it, right? Instead of just building all this up and around the market, being able to connect it to the neighborhoods. So we're also going after a grant for New York State DOT grant for the TAP application. We're looking at possibly doing additional projects on the north sides as well to connect some of these major enhancements that we're doing just around the market, kind of more into neighborhoods and other connecting infrastructure as well. So again, not too many answers for that question, but you know, I think some of these type of projects, the community streets projects we're talking about specifically today, are just a little bit smaller scale, a little bit less, you know, please don't try to take on the Hiawatha and Park Street intersection with 7 lanes. You know, those type of mammoths of projects. So they are coming, but yeah, we're still in the planning phase for that, but it is starting, so.
Okay, and Andrew, thank you for dropping that in the chat. There, we do have a TIP map, which is a transportation improvement program map, that shows where projects that are funded are occurring. In terms of the regional market one, I think it'd be great to look at our past study and that article that kind of highlights what they are planning on doing. And it might be beneficial to think of what are ways to connect into that, or something that connects to that area that isn't necessarily addressed in that specific plan. But yeah, take a look, see what they're planning, and kind of build off of that in some way. I think would be a great way to highlight those connections a little bit better. Rick, I think you. Oh yeah,
sorry,
Andrew, sorry.
I was going to jump right on that point, just saying that yes, like the tip is just you know, one resource of projects that are coming up, but a good point that kind of builds off Kevin's is that these are definitely like longer terms. So if you hear, oh, you know, something might be happening near the regional market, or you're speaking to some things, they might be in the pipeline, but they could be still several years off. You know, it's like a 5-year capital program, and some of that is even just like the planning phase, not even construction. So don't let you know, potential future things happening down the road prevent you from looking to do something now. But it is obviously probably good to work with the city to check and make sure there aren't any plans for, like, you know, next month, right? But you know, just something, again, just another resource to keep in mind.
Andrew or Kevin or anyone, do you have a contact of somebody that in the city, like, is the person to talk to about this, like, as our organization dives into doing more transportation related?
Yeah, it would probably be me. I'm the transportation planner for the
Okay.
city. Yeah, if you have, like, we can obviously have additional discussions if you have a site in mind or an area in mind. I'm more than willing to dive into that. You know, kind of the RTC market area is a very vague and very complex area. And then in terms of, you know, what you're looking to do as a project, if you can get some of those kind of narrowed down a little bit more, that's kind of where the discussion can start, I guess.
Awesome.
And I can drop my email in the chat as well if that's.
Yeah, I'd love that. Thanks.
Yep.
Thank you. Rick.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I was looking at a lot of the examples, and a lot of them are similar to public art projects that have been done in the past. I was just wondering if you could tell me what's the relationship between the two, and is there more than, like, do some of these have to get approved by the Public Art Commission and you, or how's that?
So in terms of Public Art Commission, for the most part, they won't be involved unless it's a large mural style installation, say you're gonna do a full mural of in the entire intersection, we might run that by the Public Art Commission first. But if you're doing bump outs that just happen to have like some sort of design to it, that's adding color, but it's not purely, it's not, the emphasis is not the work of art aspect, it's the safety aspect of it. Those type of projects won't go through the Art Commission.
So let's say that I wanted to, at the intersection of West Fayette and South Geddes Street, could I paint a giant cliff hole in the middle of the intersection to
No.
attempt to get cars to slow down?
No, we would not be able to do that.
No.
That one probably is not going to be approved, but
Okay.
Frank?
Yeah, I also had questions about crosswalks, and that was the one that Rick asked was one of them in regards to, painting, enhancing, design on a currently existing crosswalk. But my other question was, in the guidebook, I saw a picture of a temporary crosswalk that was put in, but was not connecting sidewalk on the other side of it. And one of the things that happened recently is that there was a pedestrian crossing crosswalk, or it wasn't actually a crosswalk, it was signage from near West Side Street over to Light Art Park, and that was taken down recently. And I was told it was because there's no sidewalk on the other side for it to connect to, so it couldn't actually be put in there. And there's other examples on the near West Side of extra long blocks that have been chopped up over the years, and now they there's a lot of fast traffic and things that go down those, and they also don't have necessarily connecting sidewalks on the sides of the streets where a crosswalk could be put in. Is that something that can be done temporarily in this program?
So the city will have final say on exactly what can go in, but the idea of these being demonstration projects, they don't necessarily have to adhere to the same level as a permanent installation. So there might be opportunities, especially on some of the less busy streets, like Fayette might be a difficult one to put that in on a temporary basis, but on some of the other streets on the near West Side that do have those longer blocks, I think those would be prime candidates for this type of infrastructure, this type of temporary infrastructure project. But and ultimately every project will have to be approved by the city. And it might be just adjusting the location slightly or adjusting the design slightly to fit what the city needs. But I would definitely say that they're projects that should be considered, depending on the location.
Great, thank you.
I know Tina, Peter, and Dallas have joined. If you guys have any questions, please feel free to raise your hand, unmute yourself. It's just having an open conversation right now.
Well, hey, I'm going to throw it back to you guys. So since you started this program, are there any things like you're hoping to get ideas and a lot of people that want to do things? What are you hoping that happens in an ideal scenario? Like, what would you guys, you put all this together for a reason, what would you guys love to see happen?
Well, I think there's a couple different things, and representatives from ADAPT and the city, please step in if you guys want to include, add anything to this, but we'd really like to see projects across the city, in different neighborhoods across the city. We don't want it to all be in certain neighborhoods that just happen to have the most active groups. Obviously, we're expecting that from certain areas that do have very active groups on this. We'd also like to see a variety of projects proposed, temporary bike lanes, bump outs, crosswalks, really try so that it's not all just intersection murals or something like that. We want to see a variety of projects. But we see this as a way of really engaging with the community and getting people to rethink how their streets can act and can function. I think be able to see something on the ground and actually use it for a short period of time helps us understand how the landscape can change, and that not everything has to be a very expensive project. Some of these things can be, if they're successful, they could always be implemented on a more permanent basis if the city sees a value in it. And sometimes it'll be on a very low cost basis too, depending on what the type of project is. But yeah,
Just to speak
Sarah?
on behalf of AdaptCom, I agree with everything you said. Adapt is still working through our process for how we'll review and make a selection for the award. So I'm kind of speaking more personally than on behalf of Adapt, but I'm definitely looking for something that's also implementable maybe someday too. So yes, it's a nice pop-up project, but it's something we can turn to the city and say, bump outs worked great here. Cars slowed down, pedestrians felt safer to cross. Like maybe this could be advanced into a project. So I think that's an exciting opportunity that we have here. And then overall, just thinking about traffic calming and prioritizing pedestrians, cyclists, bus users, and again, maintaining traffic flow, but bringing the streets back to all users.
Yeah, I'll add to what Sarah's saying about something that maybe in the longer term could be turned into an implementable project. I just want to emphasize, even with these pop-up projects, this is a pilot year. We would like to see this continue in future years, but to do that, the first year needs to be successful. So I just want to make sure that people don't bite off more than they can chew. So there should be projects that you can do with a fairly small group of volunteers. You have to be able to organize those volunteers and get them to come out and do the installation. It's probably something that you got to be able to do in a few hours, a half a day. It's got to be under about $3,000. I would say you don't have to aim to hit that $3,000 mark. Something less expensive this first year is fine. We want projects this first year that are doable and that can be successful, so that maybe in the future years we can start to think a little bigger with these projects, add more projects, do things that maybe are a little more complicated, but we really want to see success with this the first year.
If anyone else has any questions, please feel free to raise your hand or just unmute.
So this is something that's come up over the years too. SMTC has done other projects, and I remember talking to them about the where to put bike lanes, not to put bike lanes. And it's like, well, what about West Fayette Street, between Gaddis and downtown? And they're like, no, that's one of the red line areas. It's bad. We shouldn't do bike lanes there. And I'm like, that's why you should do bike lanes there, right? So on intersections like Gaddis and Fayette, I have tenants that walk back and forth across that intersection a lot, and it feels like you're taking your life into your hands every time you do it, because it's such an angry intersection. It is like, this is like over at like Marcellus and Oswego, like, do you really like it'd be cool to have something there, but how much is it really needed, right? So what I mean is that you have the intersections that really need it, like whether it sounds dangerous or not dangerous. The point of making an intersection safer is to make the dangerous intersections safer. Are people willing to help with the intersections that really need the safety improvements? As tied together with this kind of a program.
Megan, do you want to take
Well,
it or?
I hear what you're saying, Rick, but I do think the intersection of Gaddis and Fayette that has a lot of traffic. It's two major roadways. I think that's going to be a heavy lift for this program. that may need a higher level of analysis and a higher level of design to come up with something that is implementable there than you can really do with a temporary pop-up project. Not even to get into, like, to do these installations is going to require some road closures and some permitting, and that again is a heavy lift to be able to close those streets to do that installation. So I guess I would encourage people to think more about neighborhood streets. Not to say there isn't a need elsewhere, but again, we're looking for projects that these are citizen-driven, volunteer-implemented, temporary projects.
Hi, this is Frank again. I see the ADAPT CNY funding potential and also know about the TNT funding potential. I'm wondering if you all are researching or advocating any other organizations for funding towards any of this.
Well, so for this first year, all the funding is going to go through the ADAPT project. We're only going to consider projects that receive the ADAPT funding. We have that in the guidebook, as in the future, we would like to see this become something that is kind of self-perpetuating, where people who come in with funding from various sources, and as we get to that point in future years, we would love to identify more funding opportunities as well for people. So that in future years, you come in, you secure funding in some capacity to do these type of projects, and you can do them on your own. But for this pilot year, since it is the first time that this is occurring, we kind of want to keep it as a smaller pool, just to, as Megan said, we want to make sure there's projects that are workable, good demonstrations of different types of projects throughout the city, and in this way we kind of build up that support for future years, where maybe more projects can be taken on because there's other funding opportunities identified. But yeah, just for this first year, all projects have to go through the ADAPT funding process, which is simple enough. It's just submitting the application and they will be reviewed by us at SMTC as well as ADAPT. And that's all kind of streamlined for this first year, instead of having people go out and try and secure funding elsewhere.
And I'll jump on that. We've mentioned the guidebook a couple times, so I just threw that in the chat as well in case anyone is not familiar with it. Tom's done a really nice job, putting together the website there that it's based off of, right? So if anybody, which I'm going to throw in there too, is not taking a look at that does have a lot of really good resources on the program. So.
Just to emphasize an earlier point, in that guidebook, there is a table of project types by project level. It's on page 34, and that gives some guidance about with some traffic volume thresholds for what would be appropriate projects. So a lot of the project types are most appropriate for streets with less than 2,500 AADT. So we're looking at more of the lower volume neighborhood streets off of the major arterials in the city.
Just for people who don't have the guidebook open, I threw it up on the screen right now. This is that table that Megan was referring to. It's in a section of the guidebook that has a bunch of different project ideas, kind of gives you what might be required for them. Just as a jumping off point, these might help inspire some people. These might not meet what you're trying to do or what you'd like to see done. But just as a jumping off. And that, by the way, this was the crosswalk that was mentioned earlier, that doesn't fully connect, it seems like, on this side, but does on this side. That was just referenced earlier in the conversation. So want to make sure everyone kind of sees what we're talking about in case you don't have it open. Peter?
Basically, I do have maybe a larger question and a critique. First of all, this is a fantastic idea. Congratulations for starting it. I think it's pretty innovative. Second of all, I'm wondering if seeing as this is kind of a pilot year for you on this program, if you'd consider doing some kind of regular forum, kind of like this, but more pertaining to the actual projects, and to iteratively kind of change the program if people think there's enough of a need. And I'll use a specific example of I think you've got some great idea about what Tactical Urbanist does. The one thing I think you may have depreciated somewhat is the direct feedback from the community. I say this because step 7 is notify your neighbors, I think, in your checklist in the main document. I would make the case for appreciating that to a higher level of as being that might be more of a starting off point, that the neighborhood, that in the best tactical urban examples I've seen, the neighbors becoming more earlier and more deeply involved in the design, and from the point of view of local knowledge of knowledge of the streets, of knowledge of the danger of, I say, a particular intersection. So
Yeah.
it's just
So the notify your neighbors in part 7 is just, that is only one part of the public involvement aspect of that. That is specifically about notifying them when it's being installed, so they know that a street might be closed or part of the street might be closed from a certain time. In the application itself, we recommend getting community support letters from neighborhood businesses, community groups in that surrounding area. So we really want to see that there is community support for this idea at the application step. Like, as you're submitting it, we want to know that there's people in that community who actually want it beyond just the applicant itself. So that is the start of the public involvement process. And then later in the process, at step 4 on our on the application process flow chart, step 5 is, before any project gets fully approved by the city for installation, we are requiring that project applicants attend their community's TNT to discuss it in a public forum, present the idea, present the project, generally when they're hoping to install it, and get feedback. And we require that they send that they prove that they were at the TNT. We might also most likely be in attendance as well. And we want to hear that feedback that they receive at the TNT. If there's concerns about certain things that they haven't included in their original application that might be adjusted before it's officially installed. But so there are multiple check-in points with the community, starting right with the application process itself.
is and the TNT thing, is that in the main document?
Yep. If you go to, if you're on the flow chart, which is on page 6, number 5 is present your project in a public forum such as a TNT meeting.
Okay.
So then when you get to step 6 in the full document, it will highlight specifically, kind of just talk about what we step 5, present your project in a public forum, and that's really emphasizing, like, we need that sort of public buy-in. And if there's some red flags raised at the TNT meeting, that project might have to be rethought. If there are some minor concerns, those little adjustments are not difficult to make in the project design, but any sort of major red flag might prompt us to consider, all right, that project needs to be reconsidered and maybe presented again if there's substantial enough concerns.
Okay, it's just to say, some people may have some other ideas about how to do that differently. If you just want making a pitch that you might remain open to that.
Yeah, no, and that's what this is, a pilot year. We're gonna see how this goes. If we see that there are some issues in the process, that will hopefully be ironed out throughout this process. But we kind of needed a framework to start with, and then something to iterate. Ideally next year, as this program might come around again, to hopefully improve upon it.
Sure.
Hey everyone, I'm on my phone and seeing lots of great links being put in the chat. I'm wondering if you could maybe send that around, the chat around, or those links around via email afterwards.
Yep, yeah, we'd be happy to send those links.
Yeah, we're gonna post the recording on the website, but we can follow up with an email with the links that were put in the chat. Let's see, you know.
Yeah, and a lot of those links are to our Community Streets website. So as if you can get onto there, the guidebook is on there. The traffic volume data, there's a link to that on there as well. But we'll make sure that everyone on this call receives the links that were put in this chat.
Any questions from anyone we haven't heard from yet?
I've been kind of back and forth, so this may have already been covered on the timeline where it says applications are due by February 1st, and then the design approval takes place in like after April, May. So in the initial application, how specific do we need to be about the design, or can it just sort of be the concept and then, you know, still be refining the design?
Yep, so we do need some sort of sketch of the design. It doesn't have to be professional level or anything, but we need to be able to, when we look at it, have an idea of what you're trying to accomplish with it. We'll, if your project is selected, we'll sit down with you and kind of help you flesh it out to a point where it's ready to be installed. I know the city will be looking at it once we get it to that point where it's much more refined and almost ready to go. So yeah, it doesn't have to be perfect in any way. We're not expecting perfection in the applications, just a concept that we can grasp.
Got it. Okay, thank you.
Yep.
This may have also already been covered, or maybe in the materials that I haven't gotten to yet.
Okay, no worries.
Funding. So I assume this project exists because it's providing some level of funding, but are you also looking for additional programs that are buying in by contributing as well, or will this essentially cover all related expenses?
So for this year's project, the 3 selected projects will be funded through ADAPT CNY. Ideally, in future years, additional funding might be sought, but for this year, it'll only be projects funded through this program. And that funding will be up to $3,000. Again, want to stress, you don't need to spend $3,000. It's just up to.
Yeah, and that level is purposely to, again, like keep these 2 projects that we think a volunteer group can manage in this first year. So you don't get bonus points by throwing additional money into the pot. In fact, we probably don't want you to bring additional money to the table this year because we don't want these to be really large projects. But you can get a lot of paint for $3,000.
Yep, and I would say check out the cost estimator worksheet that we have available. Those are just some ballpark numbers of what things cost. And you'll kind of get a sense looking through different project ideas, getting an idea of what you might need. And that'll help you kind of structure it a little bit more.
I'm looking at the, sorry, we have some construction going on. I'm looking at the guidebook right now. Is where in the, did you say it was in the guidebook that the pricing was?
So if you go to our website, here I will, let me share my screen. I can kind of walk us through it a little. So are you guys all seeing the screen right here? All right, so this is our website, smtcmpo.org/community streets. This is basically like a go-to website with all the information that we hope you need. If there's information that we're missing, which I do want to add the tip map to this. I think that's a helpful link to have. You can kind of scroll through here. You have the guidebook and application timeline. The application itself, which you can either do a PDF version of it or you can do an online version. We recommend the online version if possible, but understand if you want to do the PDF. The PDF does have all of the questions available, so you can kind of get a sense of what we're going to be asking for people. But so for the cost estimator, it's under this cost estimates tab, and it's just an Excel spreadsheet. I'm not going to save it because I have it right here. Has a bunch of different objects or materials that you might use. Has ballpark numbers of what they would cost. Just enter in the amount that you need. It'll just do the math for you. If there's materials that we don't have on here, and I know this is not an exhaustive list, there will be other things that we didn't think of, or maybe you know of a better price for something because you can get it from somewhere else. We have some spaces down here that you can add those specific items and add that to the calculation as well. So all of this should give you a good idea of what your project might cost. If there's other questions you have more specifically about things, we can always address those one-on-one. If you send us an email or give us a call, we could always kind of walk through any group through this and what certain things might be used for in different ways. Going back to the website, these design guides, the tactical urbanism materials and design, the meatpacking, these kind of these are helpful in giving you an idea of what type of materials are used in other places. Feel free to walk through these as well if you'd like. There's a lot of helpful information. There's a lot of good programs out there that are doing similar things. The materials palette right here. Yeah, so I would say look through all those, see if that kind of answers your questions. If not, always come back to us, and we'd be more than happy to answer anything more specifically.
Last question.
Yeah, no problem.
I noticed from that spreadsheet that any funding for like an artist to consult with you or work with you on getting the project going is not included. Is that specifically excluded? Is the artist that kind of is leading the effort is also expected to volunteer their time?
Yes, so any sort of effort on the design aspect of it, the funding is there for the materials. So if you do have an artist who you're hoping to work with, we hope that they're someone that is part of your organization or is willing to volunteer their time as part of the organization. But yeah, that the funding does not go towards paying them.
If we have another funding source that can pay the artist to participate, is that allowed or specifically not recommended?
You know, I don't see an
Yeah, I
issue
don't think
with
we really
that.
thought of that. That's a great question. I would say let us think on that one. a bit, because I see what you're saying. But yeah, we had not envisioned that any of this funding would pay for labor. It was for materials.
I just know we have some local artists that we ask to do a lot of things for free, and this feels like one more thing we're asking them to do, more labor we're asking them to do for free.
No, I know that's a great question. I think that's something that we'll talk with the city and adapt about how we want to handle. But I think that's a very good question for us to really have a good answer to, that we sadly don't right this second.
I do want to emphasize too that we are looking for, as Tom started out at the beginning saying, a variety of projects. So while like murals are great, we want to get more than just say intersection murals. So I think there's a lot you can do that you don't necessarily need an artist to design.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point of you don't really need an artist to paint a temporary bike lane or even a temporary crosswalk. But if you are thinking of an intersection mural or bump outs that have a specific design to them that's not just solid paint, that might be something an artist should be involved with. So it really kind of depends on what type of project you're looking to do.
Yeah, this is not intended to like step on the toes of any other. There's a lot of great public art programs happening in the city now. And that's not necessarily this, although I get that there's a little bit of overlap. Anything else for now? We haven't had anyone join in a while. I know I have a few more on my registration list that haven't jumped on, but I guess I would say if there's no more immediate questions, staff might just like mute ourselves and turn off our cameras, but we'll hang out. You all are welcome to hang out, but also we won't be offended if you want to jump off if you've asked all your questions.
I do have one more question.
Okay.
And this again is a kind of general question, but wondering if this program could somehow relate with the city's comprehensive planning process. And this is just concept of we're taking Rick's idea of Rick's question about an intersection, which I guess the city might consider some intersections too complex, and which is understandable to deal with this in this program. Is too high volume and so on, high risk. Nonetheless, the process itself might be useful for the city's comprehensive, I mean, the Dover coal thing and going forward on the whole, anywhere in the city for transportation. Just wondering if that might be a possibility.
Well, so I don't want to say whether the city will use this type of process as part of their ongoing studies that they're doing, but we do recommend people to take a look at studies that are publicly available and are completed, that kind of show what ideas the city is wanting to pursue in different ways and what has been recommended in different occasions. We have a list on the website of a bunch of previous studies that the city and the SMPC have worked on related to streets within the city. So we recommend anyone to take a look at those while they're developing ideas. Because I think the city, while we've recommended things to them and they are interested in certain things, they might not have had a chance to really act on anything. And I think they would love to see some of those ideas put into practice temporarily and see how they work before they fully commit to something. So but in terms of ongoing studies that they're currently doing with Dover Coal and some of their other projects they're working on, I can't speak specifically to that. And I don't know if Kevin would be able to either, but let me know if I'm wrong on that.
Yeah, thanks for the question, Peter. Yeah, we definitely are aware of some of the, the larger intersections and areas that have some concern with safety issues and things like that as well. But obviously for this program with a $3,000 budget, we're looking more towards, temporary things, those bigger intersections. We really need to, if we were going to install something, you'd have to have MUTCD compliant signage for some, given advance warnings, things like that, depending on curb bump outs or chevrons, if lanes were getting, thinner, things like that. So these are not those type of projects, I guess, to test out on larger intersections at this time, especially being the pilot program. But this lines up really nicely with some of our other initiatives of neighborhood greenways, the speed humps, trying to slow people down in neighborhoods, right? Like where people live, right? And then those type of scenarios is kind of where we're trying to focus some of these other efforts of, every TNT meeting I go to, speeding around the city, right, is a huge issue. These are those type of programs that we can try to maybe do an installation mid-block on a really long block to make people to temporarily narrow an intersection where there could be conflict, shorten crossing distance for pedestrians, try to make people more aware of those scenarios with a temporary thing. And then if like that does work, it could evolve into a more permanent project, right? So I don't think, we're taking these funds and these ideas and going after, major 4-lane intersections at this time to see if it works. Obviously, that's a bit more involvement, but I think we want to have a bit, we want kind of, we hear from people, we hear from TNT communities and neighborhoods and the speeding and the safety issues on the neighborhood streets. And that's kind of where we want this program to kind of focus the emphasis on, right? To see what works and what doesn't. And if there's 2 bike lanes that are parallel, how can you make a bike lane that, connects the 2 of them, things like that. So those are the types of scenarios that we're really trying to explore with this.
So it's saying that you could maybe consider this as a window on maybe what people are interested in seeing, what they would prefer seeing, and kind of a more on the cultural side of rather than technical, what is actually the safest or something. But I mean, keeping both in mind, if you get my drift, yeah.
Yeah, and I think it's, it's communities are telling us, hey, this neighborhood intersection is really bad. Whether, I think we had a couple examples, Marcellus or Tisco, like if that's a long stretch without stop signs, like that's up to the community and the neighbors to kind of formulate an idea to come up with that. They don't have to come up with $3,000 out of their own pockets, but it's something that, whether it be art or whether it be something in terms of safety and things like that, whatever they want to emphasis. I think that's why SMTC is willing to work with those groups and kind of come up and formulate a plan to produce something in their own neighborhoods, right? And that's kind of the emphasis for this type of these projects.
And you're right, it does highlight people's interests in different ideas and different topics, and also might highlight neighborhood issues that maybe don't rise to everyone's radar because they're not the major streets or something like that, but they're significant quality of life issues that the neighbors experience. And I think that's another benefit to this, is we start to understand, all right, these are issues that people are dealing with on a day-to-day basis that we might be missing.
You might not hear those issues otherwise, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and the last point I just want to make is that these could be, this is a new program. These are new items to the streets of Syracuse. In some instances, whether they be, painted curb bump outs, things like that, those are all newer things to the city. So we do want to kind of, introduce it in a way that it's advertised as, we're doing these for reasons. We're doing these for safety. We're doing these, as a community project. We're listening. This is something that we're trying to also, work with you guys to make your community safer and decrease speeds on neighborhood streets and better crossings, we get that, right? We can't go around and fix every single intersection, next construction season, but if that's something that's an emphasis for them and prioritizing and making sure that it works and things like that for 6 months of the year, then that's something that's much more advertised for us as, it's already been functioning for 6 months. So, maybe that's something we can implement permanently as well. If we put something up in an octopus, a mural in the middle of an intersection and there's 30 car crashes because everybody's looking at the octopus driving, then that's right. It's something that we need a little bit more smaller scale of something manageable that we can study, make sure that it's safe, and go forward from there. So hopefully that was rambling, but answered your question a little bit.
And just maybe the thought, some people might be intimidated to say some things unless, certain conditions are there, I guess, that they can talk without looking too weird or something.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, I'm stepping off. Thanks for taking all my questions.
All right. Yep. Thank you. Thanks for coming.
Hello.
Feel free to ask anything. Everyone who's kind of been on has asked a bunch of questions. I think they're kind of hanging out to see if any other questions come up that they are interested in. So feel free to ask at anything you got.
Okay. Yeah, thanks. I was hoping to come earlier. I just got off of another Zoom call that went 2.5 hours.
Oh, fun.
I had that was anyway. Yeah, thanks for doing this. I would yeah, hi. So are you with SMTC?
Oh, yep. I guess we should reintroduce. Yep, I'm Tom Barnett. I'm with the SMTC. We're some of the individuals working on this. If anyone else from SMTC / the city would like to say hello.
Megan McGowan, PC.
Andrew Fraser.
And
Right.
I'm Kevin Busa with the city.
Oh, okay. Hi, Kevin.
How you doing?
You've talked before. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, Kevin was involved with I live on Lancaster Avenue in Syracuse, and we just got one-sided parking.
all right, I just saw
established.
that announcement.
Yeah,
Nice.
yeah, and a bike lane on one side. Really happy with that. The signs just went into it's switching it from even odd parking to the one-sided parking. I'm happy with that. I can't speak for everyone. Anytime a change happens, I'm sure there's some people not too happy.
Yeah, unfortunately, we couldn't get 2 bike lanes in on that side just because of dimensions with the parking, and we definitely had to keep parking. So, yeah, hopefully it's working over there, and the new signs are in. And I saw Buckingham, we got some speed humps on there as well. So hopefully everybody's a little more traffic calming for cars speeding up and down. Some of the students.
Yeah, I think it's good. I think I walk around when I walk along Buckingham a lot, mostly on Lancaster where I live, but yeah, the speed humps, I see brake lights when cars are approaching them, which is half the battle. I think oh, well, actually, since you're here, Kevin, do you know if the plan was to do sharrows then on the northbound lane to at least indicate that where bikes should go?
I don't think so, because those travel lanes are I want to say 11 feet maybe, and it's a bus route as well. So I think the alternative is providing that neighborhood greenway for the bikes on Buckingham. So we're doing this in certain situations where there's a lot of traffic, on Lancaster, if we can provide both installation of speed humps and also provide more sharrows on a parallel neighborhood street. That's kind of where we're putting some additional bike infrastructure resources. So that, if somebody is riding their bike, it might be easier for them to go down Buckingham, and also connects to Meadowbrook over there as well. That connection piece, so. I
Okay,
don't think we had sharrows on that. We do have sharrows on both lanes on Buckingham as well.
okay. I know people who bike around the neighborhood and live on Buckingham and the next one over, which is Kensington. I, for one, will not go over to Buckingham. I'm just gonna go stay on Lancaster. And maybe laziness on my part, but yeah, it's okay. I think, I mean, I worry a little bit that people driving cars around me will be even more upset because I'm not in what looks a little bit like a bike lane. So the parking lane on the northbound side. But I mean, I've been dodging that. That's nothing. I don't know that it's worse. And I think having no lines at all is maybe worse, but yeah, I know that's not why this meeting was called. I did have some questions about this program.
Yeah.
But thanks, Kevin. Yeah, I had 3 or 4 people email me this solicitation to apply for one of these. So my wife, mostly my wife, but she's at work right now. My wife and I kind of petitioned and got neighbors together, and eventually were able to talk to people like Kevin and Neil in the city to get something for speeding on our street. So Lancaster Avenue also has a school and a church basically right next to each other. The school is a K-8 school, and there's a lot of neighborhood kids that walk there. Usual problem that it's on a busy street, and there's 2 intersections in particular that I was thinking about for this. Well, really one in particular. One is right by the school, but the nice thing about that intersection with respect to traffic calming is that there's a jog, and people at least slow down when they're approaching a jog because they can't see where to go. But the intersection closer, so to the south of the school, is the intersection is Lancaster Ave and Lancaster Place. Easy to remember. Lancaster Place goes to the west, and then across the street from it is Andover, which goes to the east. And it's basically a 4-way stop, but the east-west streets don't line up.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. No, I just looked it up. Yep. I know exactly what intersection you're talking about.
Yeah. So east-west, when people are coming up to Lancaster, they come to a complete stop because they know Lancaster's a fast street, and they know that nobody stops in the north-south direction. And so it's effectively a 2-way stop. And maybe that's all it should be. I mean, maybe pedestrians should know it's not a safe place to cross almost. That's a little cynical, but that's an intersection that I'm very concerned with. I was putting up Christmas lights on our house the day after the lines were painted, and so I was outside for hours just watching, and of course I was really happy to see the lines, but then seemed to do nothing for going through the stop sign. And I don't know, from my read of the project, just like examples of projects in the guidebook, I was excited about like the painted curb extensions, for example. One question I have is like if that's a feasible thing at that intersection because there's now a bike lane on one side. It's probably not on Google Maps yet.
No.
But there's a bike lane on the west side of the street, the southbound lane, and there's a parking lane on the right side of the street. Um,
Is there parking in that section? So like between Andover and Lancaster Place, is there allowed parking along that part of the block right now? I don't know what
Oh,
the
yeah.
new striping is or anything like that. But if not, that could be, or even if there is, maybe that could still be a potential spot for something I could see.
Yeah, it might be, it's awkward because the intersection, I don't know if you call that a box or whatever, but the region where there's no lines painted is kind of big because the side streets don't line up. But
Yeah,
it's an awkward.
yeah, it's like, and I don't know specifically if there's parking there, because I could see there being a reason not to have parking as it's technically within the intersection.
Right. I saw, I mean, I was discouraged in the guidebook. It said something like for the curb extensions that if there's a bike lane, that actually you can't put it right in the middle of the bike lane. And that seemed to rule out this intersection as a possibility for this. I mean, it could be that I'm not thinking creatively enough about it, but it is. Would
I
you
mean,
have
with
thoughts on that?
without me seeing exactly how the bike lane is right now, I mean, there are like floating islands or bump outs that could potentially be a thing where the bike lane continues through, but then there's a basically like a pedestrian refuge on the other side. So if someone has to go through it, stops on the pedestrian refuge and then continues across the vehicle lanes. I don't know the specific design of this right now, but let me see if I can find.
Since you mentioned it, while you're looking, I'll say I really like the idea of what's it called, a refuge, like pedestrian island. Is that the sort of thing you're talking about?
Yeah, it's but I'm trying to see if I can pull up a good representation, because I know they use them in plenty of cities across the country. Let me see if I can find it. Is this...
So just to clarify, so there's now a bike lane, like southbound only, and a parking lane on the northbound side?
Exactly.
Okay. Somewhat familiar with the area, but I guess I haven't been over there recently enough to have seen that change.
I think it's like brand new, because
Okay.
the city just posted about it.
Okay. So my only concern with like a pet refuge would be that this doesn't seem like a very wide street. And now if there's a bike lane and a parking lane, is there space still in the middle for a pet refuge, or?
Well, that's where I'm, at least the way let me see if I can. I just had one that like I liked, but it's too small to
So
see.
just to jump in, I just found an example type. So it would be
Okay.
something like the website that I just sent you, but
Mhm.
obviously the raised concrete pieces would be painted. So
Here,
if you were
I'll
to like,
share it so we can all
Yeah, okay.
see.
so if you
Yes.
scroll down a little bit,
Okay.
so some of these photos, just like if again, like this seems like a wider street. But like a design like this would probably work just in terms of what's raised concrete right there would be more painted. Like you're saying, again, it's a $3,000 budget. These are smaller projects. So like something like that, maybe the delineators
Yeah, you
out
could
there
put the
would be
temporary
possible.
delineators, paint this
For-
somehow where it's differentiated from the bike lane.
So this is something if when you're designing, you could bring, precedent examples of these type of scenarios to the table and say, something like this, but obviously that would be painted instead of full on curbed concrete.
Yeah, so it's not a traditional pedestrian refuge. It like where it would be in the middle of the street. It's more an extended bump out that allows the bike lane to continue through.
Yeah, and also that top right photo shows both a crosswalk, right, functioning and a bike lane functioning.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Yeah, it does feel more like a curb extension. It's just kind of
Yes.
on the other side of the bike lane.
yeah. I was trying to
Yeah.
figure out the
Okay.
proper wording for it, but
Yeah.
but yeah, that could be something to consider. I don't
Yeah.
know the specific layout of the street. But this could be an option. It could be an option of here, since this is the intersection you're talking about, right?
Yeah, and if you go a little bit, yeah, that's, yeah.
Yeah, Andover, Lancaster Place. It could even, maybe it's doing something on this side where the parking is on the northbound side, doing something here to make this a little bit narrower, to encourage slower movement through here. That could, if you don't want to mess with the bike lane, maybe it's better to do something on this side. I did jump on the street view, and I know there's this here, so I can't imagine there's too much parking about. I mean, it says no standing anytime. I don't know if this is, I
Yeah.
mean, this is from the summer, so hopefully that's still the case. So it might be just emphasizing that cars are not supposed to be right here in some capacity. Maybe that's an painted extension along this length. But I think that's something that you guys can kind of work through. But I think there's some options that might be possible in this intersection.
All right, can you actually leave that there before?
Oh yeah.
Oh, that's okay.
Oh, do you want me to go back down to Street View?
Just so I can't exactly point, but I can tell you.
Okay.
That's
let
a
me
good
back a little
view.
bit.
Yeah, that's good.
Here?
I'll-
Sorry, let me stop moving around.
Okay. Yeah. So we're looking northbound now, and
Yep.
I like what you were explaining on the northbound side. I will say though that, like, you can see that hill. It's just a gradual
Mhm.
incline there, and up there is where the school is, and there's also a few more two-family units, and there's more street parking, and I do think generally speeds there aren't the worst issue. It's more like if someone's coming down that hill, like toward us, like if we were standing here,
And
we
they were
wouldn't
coming
be
down
allowed very long. This is such a bad place. Yeah, okay, now good. We're on this side of the street. And I mean, it happens, people roll through stop signs. I don't actually am not morally opposed to rolling through stop signs, but it's the total lack of even pumping the brakes, like, because
Yeah.
people can see a long way. They're coming downhill as it is, and this intersection's a little awkward. I think
It's tough because I see this is where they're supposed to stop and
right.
then wait for a car coming from this direction. So it's not the most intuitive to be looking over here from over here. And same
Right.
from this location, looking for someone coming from this street right here.
Yeah, yeah. And when I cross here, I look and then start walking. When my kids cross here, sometimes they go by themselves to school. Sometimes, usually I walk them, but sometimes they go by themselves. They'll stand at that corner for the longest time, and I appreciate that they do that because they're being careful.
Mhm.
But because of how this is, and like this stop sign that we're looking at right here, even the people who do stop will sometimes start to roll if the pedestrian is there, thinking like, okay, come on, go ahead and cross. But then, my kids will see the car moving.
And then
And so
they'll
they end up
stop.
standing. Yeah, ends up.
Well, so that's where I could see visually narrowing this as a benefit, because I still think that it dissuades people from trying to get through there too quickly, even if they are just rolling through. I think having some sort of barrier, and also fewer kids, if they can kind of gets them out into the road a little bit further without being
Yeah.
in the road yet. Makes that distance a little bit shorter. They might feel more comfortable at certain points of getting across without being too nervous about the cars. But again, like I think there's things you can explore. I don't want to give you exactly what to do in any way. But I think that this could be a good intersection to think of something for. Just because it is an awkward location. But that has value because it is near a school, just a couple blocks up or even a block up. So there is pedestrian activity, and I'm trying to emphasize that there is pedestrian activity.
Yeah, it's mostly K through 8 kids around school hours, but then there's of course if you go south on Lancaster, that's the south campus of SU, and to the north there's a lot of the off-campus students. So there's also that's actually probably the majority of the bicycles and scooters we see are the college students.
Getting from South
From
Campus up, yeah.
South Campus or I mean, grown-ups use scooters too, but it seems to be mostly the college students. I'm not opposed to them. I appreciate more people on two wheels, but it does seem to be mostly the younger people. Yeah, one question I wanted to ask is about the islands. That are they?
Mhm.
I kind of want to save myself the trouble. Are they just not suitable for this intersection, or would that be a possibility?
I mean, if we're considering the ones that Kevin sent over at that link, I think those are definitely a possibility, because there's something where you can do a version of it with paint and some vertical delineators as a way to kind of emphasize the height of it. See, you sent that.
Oh, I didn't mean
Oh
to
yeah.
interrupt.
No,
Yeah,
I wanted to see what you're saying. Yeah, so when it'd be a little, compared to this one, it'd be a little bit closer to the curb. It'd really just be enough for the bike lane to pass through, and then by 2-3 feet. I could see that being a viable project. Like at least right as of right now, I don't see any immediate red flags with that.
Yeah, I feel like maybe your application is some kind of traffic calming around the intersection of Lancaster Place, Andover Road, Lancaster Ave, and maybe sketch something out that you're thinking. And I think we can work with you through the process of figuring out, is it better as a painted median? Is it better as painted curb extensions? I think we could figure that out in the process. But if that's what you're thinking of, like get the idea in.
Yeah, and it set, like, if you want to attach some picture examples that you find, that would also help, because we know drawing it out is it's not going to be everyone's best way of demonstrating it, but having photo references like that, or the link that Kevin sent, or other photo references that you have, would help us understand what you're trying to get at, for sure.
Okay. Yeah, I can.
And I think, knowing that, say, like the school is on board, I guess who would be submitting this? Is this coming from neighborhood association? Is this Ed Smith PTO? Is this All Saints Church? Is it?
Yeah, I'd have
all
to.
three of those together.
Right. I mean, I saw the thing about the insurance. I know I'm involved with the PTO, and I know they do insurance for events. So I have to ask. Have to ask. Yeah, I don't have that lined up. I don't. I need to look into that.
And I mean, it would just be good to have them on board regardless, just because I think it makes sense. This is a key crossing point to get to the school. So having them involved in some way would benefit not only the project, but also as an advocate for this type of improvement.
Sure, that makes sense. Um, can I throw out another
Sure,
question?
that's what we're here. We got about 7 more minutes, so yeah, why not?
All right. This might be totally not the right forum, but what about speed cameras? Is there something related to this that could shoehorn in the idea of speed cameras?
So that's definitely beyond the scope of these type of projects.
Okay, I thought maybe. Yeah.
Yeah, speed cameras cost a great deal more than we would be able to fund for this. I do know the city is looking into their use around schools. I don't, not positive where that is at right now. I know they're working through that right now to, believe, get permission from the state to install them. Kevin would know more, but yeah, that's definitely outside the scope of this project.
Understandable.
Yeah, that's definitely something that is we're looking into. It is a lot more complex than we initially thought it was. We're still exploring that. Right now, it's only legal in front of in school zones specifically. So that's what we're definitely looking into, but obviously there's legislation and security and you know, where's the data going and how's it reading license plates, and this is only right now in New York City currently. I think Buffalo tried it for a minute. I don't think that was successful or something like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's definitely something that we're somewhat interested in doing and trying at some point, but that is definitely not something for this project. But yeah, I think just back to your discussion, I think this curb bump out area is a good area. Just thinking, obviously that's a bus route, so 12-foot travel lanes and getting into those type of details and you know, making sure that the travel lanes align on both sides of the intersection, and just did some quick math. So it's 36 curb to curb on that area, minus 12-foot travel lanes, minus 5-foot bike lane gives you about 6.5 feet left. So if you're curb bumping out 3 feet on either side, 3.5 feet on either side through the intersection, and then obviously tapering it back from the intersection to make sure that the travel lanes line up through the intersection, things like that. Obviously, if you go out and paint and put up vertical delineators and, you know, Central buses can't get through and start whacking all the posts down, that's not effective for anyone. So making sure some of those details are just kind of, you know, started to be worked through. And that's what SMTC is here for, right? Is to be able to assist with those type of things. But if you bring those ideas to them, this is kind of those neighborhood traffic calming projects that we're looking for right now.
Yeah, I want to show you don't need to have that level of detail in your application. Right. That's if this is deemed one of the projects that we're going to move forward with, we would work on those details with you, with your group, and refine them before they get to the city, so that they do adhere to making sure that buses are able to pass and how that's going to interact with the intersection. So don't worry about needing that specific level of detail on the application part. We'll get to that level of detail later on, but we don't need it at that point.
Sure, that makes sense. Yeah, I appreciate that.
I gotta throw this out there. The Huntington School PTO did some painted curb extensions and an intersection mural in front of the school on Sunnycrest Road. There was a first phase, which I think is on Street View, and then it was updated. Some additional curb extensions were added in 2022, and I don't think that's on the Street View yet. So it's probably worth just, yeah, this is the original, and then some additional curb extension area was added through the whole no parking zone along the whole frontage of Sunnycrest. Yeah, this is still the old one.
Yeah,
So
Oh,
that's,
yeah.
that's worth a drive over to Eastwood to take a look.
Sure. Good to know. That's a good tip. I appreciate that.
Yeah, absolutely. And that was through the PTO, and we're able to, use their, insurance policy and go through
Right.
that organization.
Okay. That's a good tip. Thanks a lot. That's very helpful.
Sure.
I'm involved with the Ed Smith PTO, and we know about sort of the other East Side schools, the Latin School PTO and the HW PTO. We sort of talk with them, but that's a great connection. I would not have thought to reach out to them. Thank you.
Sure.
yeah, that's a great example, and I know that. I think that's one of the only examples of current temporary projects in the city. So highly recommend taking a look at that, especially if it's kind of related to what you're interested in already. So
Yeah, I mean, that looked pretty good. Yeah.
we got like a last minute. So if there's any last second questions before we kind of call this Q&A a wrap, please speak now. And we'll make sure that this a recording of this will be available. So if you hopped on late or want to come back to some questions and answers that we had, it'll be on our Community Streets website. So that will be available, and we will send out the links that have been tossed into the chat to everyone who is on this meeting. So feel free to look through any of those references as well when we get that to you.
Cool.
Yep,
Well, thank
Peter?
you very much.
Just that last example is very interesting. Is there a way, for example, when your group is talking to TNT or some other public meeting, to encourage that kind of group connection, collaboration, say if you the school district or something wants to get involved?
So I mean that.
Well, okay. I was gonna say too, like we actually have a separate Safe Routes to School project right now, and the Office of Family Engagement from the school district is involved. So we have a pretty good connection with them.
So
Yeah,
you could cross-pollinate, so to speak.
Yeah, and for this project specifically, like if a PTO group or anyone like that wants to get involved, it's really up to the applicant to decide who they want to be involved with. Obviously, like if you're doing something near your school, it'd be great to have some sort of documentation that the school is on board. That will factor into decisions on what projects move forward. So having them on board would be a great benefit to any project. Or any other organization. It could be a church that's on board if you're near their congregation or something like that. We don't want to say it's just schools, but any sort of like official organization in that capacity would be someone good to have on your team on this.
Cool.
All right, if that's it, I think we'll end the Zoom call here. It's 1:02. Thank you all for participating, and we appreciate all your questions. We look forward to seeing what you guys come up with.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time.